What would you rate Trump 1 to 10? And what could he do to get to a 10?
As a leader right now, I would rate him 7 out of 10. What he's doing well, he's not talking about how great he is all the time. He's not blasting his own self-image right now. To get to a 10, he needs to be a man for all the people. Well, once you've accomplished the top of business heights, what else does your ego want? It wants the next job.
Okay, so he was ego-driven 2016, maybe 2020.
That's right.
Satyen is a guy who mentors elite leaders. And because you're a Canadian, you are a very good person to give an opinion on Trump's leadership. I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, that's a multidimensional, multifaceted, multi-layered question, Vince. First of all, he has a powerful courage that has really evoked and stoked the hearts of Americans, even those who dislike him and hate him. He survived a couple of assassination attempts, first of all, but it's not the assassination attempts themselves. You know, he believes that it was providence, divine grace, that he just turned his head at the very particular moment, which basically missed the bullet from killing him. But the more powerful piece that I see is what happened right after. He didn't just collapse. He didn't just go into fear. He rose up and he says, it doesn't matter. I'm here. I'm not going down. We will continue. We will fight. And that, I believe, struck the hearts of so many people, even to the point that his opposition believed, my goodness, this could be a false or a fake attempt, which I don't believe it was in any way whatsoever. And that whole stature of being in the midst of that level of intense adversity to say, listen, I'm here, I'm strong, we're going to fight. I believe in something. I believe that armed him even more psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, so that whatever his deeper intention is in service, I mean, come on, the man doesn't need one more dollar. The man doesn't need one more empire to win. He's won all the empires that a man can win on the temporal financial dimension. He's had the most beautiful women. He's had conquered all through legal battles and challenges, whether we believe or see any of that as real or not. That's not the point. The point is that he's here. And the other thing that I see about him in this day and age is he's far more humble, energetically, emotionally than I've ever seen him, ever. To the point where he's brought himself a super team around himself, people who are not necessarily governmental in origin, to actually fill out his leadership. And it takes a particular type of individual, a leader, to be able to say, yes, I'm strong on my own. I've achieved great success in the world of business on my own. And for what needs to happen next in the world, what needs to happen in my country for it to really prosper and bloom, and in his words, make America great again to the next dimension, is humility and courage and tenacity to bring in heavy hitters.
Not a lot of people would accuse Trump of being humble. You use that word humble with them. How do you see it with him, and how do you see it generally, humility with leadership?
I would say humbler, not humble, humbler. It's by his demonstration of once again surrounding himself with brilliant, powerful, capable individuals who've achieved great success in their life and stand for something bigger and greater, and have demonstrated that their success is solid within themselves, and they are now ready for a greater purpose and mission than their own personal achievements. To surround yourself with those type of people, not one, not two, but many, and even many more now that are being surrounded and are being called through by him. This is a practical application and demonstration of humbleness, and humbleness not just for the sake of being humble, humbleness that's sourced in a deeper purpose and to be able to do something for the greater good. In this case, the greater good of his own country. There's an ancient book of wisdom called the I Ching from China. It has 64 principles of change. One of the principles in there, it talks about a leader who keeps himself in his own ivory tower will self-corrupt. He self-corrupts because now he only surrounds himself with yes men, not other men who have achieved great heights around him, or are brilliant, or are wise, or are powerful in their own right. He only has subordinates, and the subordinates end up just being yes men, and he corrupts himself by his own drunkenness. He becomes the emperor that has no clothes. In this situation, he's shifted. Something deeply has shifted him.
So his critics, half the country and probably half the world would say, him rising up after an attack on his life is his arrogance, his sheer arrogance. The people that he's brought around him, billionaires and people who are also in ivory towers in their view. What would you say to them when they say that's not arrogance, that's not humility, that's arrogance?
Well, it's really a combination of humility and tenacity. Arrogance is perhaps his older version of himself, where it's, I'm the one, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest. And you can hear that all the time in the old days. You can see it in his old campaign. You can see it through his life, where there is this feeling within himself. Look, anyone who has a type of a arrogance that's saying, I'm the greatest, deep within, they don't feel they're the greatest. They feel they're the opposite. Psychologically, we have to put on that egoic mask of, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, this is what I've achieved, because the ego that's not fulfilled or healed within oneself, perhaps he didn't get the love, the attention, the acknowledgement from his father, his mother figures earlier in life. And so that feeling of not good enough, not valuable enough, not having enough meaning, it can create this egoic persona that, as we can see, become bombastic, become self-appreciating. But something has shifted in my experience as I tune into his field, as I tune into his psyche. And to me, now he's not saying I'm the greatest of all time. I'm the best at everything. He's not saying that. He's not expressing that, even in his gesture, in his posture, in his facial expression, in how he breathes. There's a marked difference that I can see in his subtle body, in his subtle movement, in his subtle intentionality. Now he's saying, you know what, there's others around me. And yes, we might think that these billionaires and very successful people are arrogant, but look at them. They also are feeling, I am here for something deeper than myself. They don't need to. Elon Musk doesn't need to take on more. He's got 11 companies that his mind and energy, his brilliance is totally focused on. You look like, as an example, Vivek, but Ramaswamy, he's already deeply successful, highly successful in his world. There's a feeling that they want to give back because the challenge of the times is calling them to rise beyond their own egoic completions, their own desires. And this is the natural stage of evolution as a leader. We go from the me orientation of, look at me, I need to do this for me. I need to gain my success, my win. I need to have these financial checkpoints. I need to have this type of look and feel in my life. I need to have these accomplishments, this material gain in my life to show, yes, I'm a somebody and I am me. And guess what? When we achieve that deeply within our being, the ego's not satisfied. The ego goes, I've got all this, but I'm not satisfied. And that voracious appetite either derails us and goes into more depravity, more materialism, more me, which only goes downhill. And we can see the illness of that in society. Or maybe all the criticism and critique he's getting is going, I need to listen to this. I believe he is. And he's going, you know what? We then go into the we stage of life. We go from me, we start to evolve to we. It's a natural evolution. We all are going through it. And we starts to go, how can I have a win-win? How can I not just be for myself? Because the earlier attempt to keep filling in the me has diminishing returns until ultimately the soul is bankrupt. No matter what you get, it becomes more and more bankrupt. And I believe he's already started to move into the we, and his leaders around him, Elon, Vivek, Gabby, all these folks that he's bringing him around him have achieved a lot of the me level of success. They already have. And now you can see them moving into we, but even something deeper. And that is the all. We go from me, that circle, to the wider circle of we. And now I feel they're tapping into something that is greater than me, we, and that is care for the all. And first of all, it starts with their country, but they know that if America becomes strong, aligned, it becomes integral again, becomes morally straight, it doesn't derail itself from its forefathers, grandfathers' edicts and values, that they come back to these eternal enlightened values that the whole Constitution has arisen from, then what happens is that the soul within themselves and individually and as a whole, they're living for beyond their lives. They know they're going to die. So what's the contribution they're going to make that makes America strong, which they know will trickle down and affect the rest of the world? This is what I feel what's going on with them at a soul, psycho-emotional level.
Was America not ready for a female president?
America's totally ready for a female president. That's not the challenge. It's not female or male. It's who feels integral, strong, aligned. There is a deep mistrust in some of the two, Hillary and of course we look at Kamala. There's a deep mistrust in their soul, their hearts, their altruism, their power, their capacity to make change. It's not that they're not men. It's their own individual lack of capability and even more mistrust in them than even Trump. It's the mistrust of the individual that's their downfall. And they are not the people that the people see. Can we trust them to be the leaders? If that was the case, and can we trust them to be a stronger, more powerful, more benevolent, more conscious, more active, more principled leader than the alternative Trump? No. And that's what's happened. And their records demonstrate this.
So did America elect a different president in 2016? And then I'm also curious, what do you think changed in Trump? In other words, was he corruptible or corrupt in 2016? Did sex, power, and money corrupt him? And what was the switch that happened for him?
His ego propelled him to be the president the first time around. His megalomaniacal, egoic nature, not just his purity, not just his good intentions, but that was probably 75% of his driver the first time around. Well, once you've accomplished the top of business heights, what else does your ego want? It wants the next job.
Okay, so he was ego-driven 2016, maybe 2020.
That's right. These three primordial forces of sex, power, and money can either enlighten us, and if we're not conscious, can destroy us and take us down the road of evil ultimately. We see this with all types of leaders, with sex, power, and money. And yet we can't deny these fundamental forces. We find that if we deny these fundamental forces, what will happen is that they will become more voracious. And now the old Trump, right, 2016, he was very much empowered by his greatness of himself, which is actually hiding his insecurity of himself. It's obvious. Everyone knows it who looks deeply. But why did he get in power then? Because people were sick and tired of what was happening before. People have a deep mistrust of government for 1,001 reasons, all valid, all deeply valid. And so they see, here's a strong businessman. He's bombastic. He's megalomaniac in nature. He's saying he's the greatest of this and this. He's like the Muhammad Ali of business, but Muhammad Ali was truly the greatest of all time. But this guy is just self-proclaiming his greatness without always the backing up in all these dimensions, right? And that grandiosity shone like a light, pierced the political arena at that time. And people went, you know what? We'd rather go with a wonky, bombastic, egoic leader like this, who's proven himself in business, even though he's got a lot of black spots on them as well. It's going to, whatever he does, it's going to be better than the alternative. And the alternative is so deeply corrupt, deeply entrenched in so many aspects of government. We need someone to shake it up. And I think that's what got him there. He did his best in those 4 years. He probably learned a lot. He probably got humbled a lot by how much he doesn't know about how to lead a nation. He probably got humbled and kicked a lot at a spiritual level, emotional level, psychological level, and realizing I'm under-equipped for this particular purpose and mission. I'm doing my best, but I need to know a lot more. And that's why the new Trump right now has taken the time to surround himself with brilliant, powerful, conscious, convicted leaders who have all proven themselves powerfully in their own lives already. This is a mark of great leaders, to surround themselves with other great leaders and to lead the charge.
How often does a leader actually check his ego, actually get it where it ought to be? I noticed that CEO exercise, you had me doing jujitsu with other, leaders. And you had mentioned it is an ego equalizer, something like that. Like, what is the application? What's the value to a leader to check his ego like that? And how do you do it proactively versus wait to, lose a big public battle?
So he's now, once the ego's attained the top role you can have in business, he's also been on media for decades, shows and this and this. So his ego's got the grandiosity. So the ego can never be satisfied. There is no satisfaction for the unhealed ego. It takes a great soul, a humble soul, to be willing to subject themselves to ego checking, ego reflection, and to surround themselves with others who can give them the brass tacks of what they're doing well, truly, what they're not, where they're on point, where they're aligned with truth, alignment, spirit, soul, and service, or where they're not, and to point out their shadows. The challenge is, in the journey of leadership, we don't do that. And we get our ass kicked. And it's by getting our ass kicked financially, with relationships, having our wives walk away from us, having our children hate us, having money losses, having things like this that strike us. And if they strike us and we let it strike deep, a humbling will go on. And the humbling is a bittersweet gift. It's not a problem. The humbling is a sacred path. Now, how often do leaders subject themselves to this? Rarely, very few. But the ones who do, they start going inward. First of all, you're going to have the willingness to be able to want to see your shadows in leadership, want to see your personal, your emotional, your spiritual, your relational shadows, your shadows around sex, power, money. If you're not willing to see those, you will self-destruct. You can't help it. You will self-destruct. If you are willing to see those and you go, I don't want to be like Epstein. I don't want to be like these particular type of leaders who've gotten to the ascent and they've fallen. I'm going to learn from them. Where do I need to look at? Where am I straight or not straight with my sexual force? Where am I straight and not straight with my relationships and my wielding of power? Where am I not straight and clear and clean in my heart with my wielding of my wealth and my power and my money? When we're willing to do that, the ego will start to go, holy jump, and I'm in danger. And the spirit will go, no, you're now turning into the next phase of your fuller next phase of your evolution. And your spirit is celebrating. And guess what? So is all the people around you. And you might not even realize it.
Do you see him as healed?
No, I see him not as healed. I see him finding a place within himself where, healed or not, he wants to now make a bigger impact in a positive way. Now, the healing will come through the experience of his next presidency, just by now starting off with this great intention. He's made big, huge promises. We're talking a radical shift in government, radical shifts in policy, radical stances that, looking back, aren't seeming so radical, but are needed for the malaise of the day, of the entrenchment of the day, and where what he sees and a lot of people feel is the degradation and really the falling and the dying of America and what it stands for. And so his humbling will come as he gets into office, rolls up his sleeves with the others that he's surrounded himself with, and go, okay, let's get to work and find out it's not as easy as you think it is. But I think he's willing to do it. And so are the folks that he's surrounded himself with.
What would you rate Trump 1 to 10? And what could he do to get to a 10?
As a leader right now, I would rate him 7 out of 10. What he's doing well, he's not talking about how great he is all the time. And he's surrounding himself, as I've shared, with brilliant leaders who have achieved great heights. And he's putting them in powerful positions as advisors, and those are going to lead the charge. That's why I give him a 7 out of 10. As well as he's survived 2 assassination, perhaps more assassination attempts, and has not collapsed. The very next day, he's up and running. He's willing to give 3-hour appearances on podcasts and appear on podcasts that his other opponents would never, ever do or never have, and reject it altogether. He's willing to go in the public eye, the public scrutiny like never before. That's why I give him a 7. To get to a 10, he needs to be a man for all the people. He needs to cultivate his compassion, his empathy, his understanding of the left side that are totally against him. What are their deeper motives? What are their intentions? What are their fears? And he needs to address those fears directly. I know you might fear this. I know you might fear that. I know you might fear this, and I want to address this. And I want to address this directly. And for him to do that, to be a person for his whole countrymen and women, not just for his political leniency, I think that's going to take him to a whole other level of leadership. And to do that, he's got to learn to feel what is the positive intent of those who are on the other side of his political fence. What do they truly feel? What matters to them? Not just intellectually, but he's got to let it into their heart. He's got to listen to them. He's got to call meetings and say, I'm just going to go sit in front of left-wing people, liberals, and I'm just myself. And I'm going to sit here. And then once I've done that, I'm going to bring in my whole team around me. And I want us just to listen and address their fears and their concerns without the battle strength of his Republican side or anyone around him. To do that, to sit in a hall room of only liberals, have it videotaped for hours, 3 hours, and to address them not from a defensive, not from an attack zone, but from being the leader of the whole country. That's the spiritual, emotional, psychological edge that if he does, he'll be one of the greatest leaders, demonstrating humility and bringing people together like no one else before.
So if you were to pick a leader that he ought to personify in the whole history of the world, who's that person that he could look to and say, that is the system upgrade for my leadership that I want right there?
Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was not for Hindus. He was not for Muslims. He was for humanity. He was not for men or women. He was for all people. He was not for the old or the middle or the lower classes or the rich class. He was for all humans. And he went out of his way to travel, as being born and raised a Hindu. He went out of his way to unify Hindus and Muslims who are at a time of intense battle and intense reactivity, intense collision, to the point of, religious warfare going on across the country. He did not take a stand for one or the other. He demonstrated, even when India separated at the end, he says, I'm going to move to Pakistan. Why? Because these are my people too. To the point that the Hindu faction killed him. They killed him, murdered him, because he sided not with Muslims, which is their distortion. He sided with that we are one people. And I will demonstrate it by moving myself out of now separated Hindu India into Muslim Pakistan, and he got murdered for that.
All right, so suppose the White House calls you and they say, Donald would like to spend 2 hours with you. Just give me a glimpse into that 2 hours.
First thing I would do is I would ask him, are you receptive to get direct feedback on your psycho-emotional state and your state of leadership? And I would say, I'm going to give you a rating. In our WarriorSage philosophy in leadership, we talk about the Lotus Sword. The Lotus Sword. The lotus is, the representation of the lotus is the heart, love, consciousness that's rooted in the dirt, the dirt of life. It's rooted in the muck of life. And we only gain wisdom by really rooting into our losses, our failures, and then growing a beautiful lotus out of it. The sword is a sword of truth. It penetrates illusion. And for us leaders, we have to learn to cultivate the lotus and the sword. And just as valuable, we need to cultivate and be willing and be humble enough to receive the lotus sword from others, even if it doesn't sound good, even if there's not much lotus in it and it's just a sword. A great leader is one who's willing to soften the front surface of their body, not always be defended, be in their power still, and say, okay, give me your feedback. I'm open to receiving it. Tell me what I'm doing right. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me where I'm aligned. Show me where my shadows are. Show me where I'm doing well. And, we use the Lotus Sword method. We give each other a rating of 1 to 10. In terms of integrity regarding your presence or your money situation, I give you a 7 out of 10. Why? Because you're doing these things right. To get to a 10, show me, the world, these 3 things to get what you need to do to get to a 10. That clarity of instruction, that clarity of being willing to receive that lotus sword from others, this is the hallmark of the greatest leaders. If we allow ourselves to be humble and receive that powerful feedback without defensiveness and immediate retort, and we let it saturate us, we could just, Bruce Lee said, absorb what's useful, discard what's not, and then come up with your own creations. And are you willing to take the action steps truly to turn that around? If you are, you're in for the leadership ride of your life. Not only will you become the greatest man you could ever become, you could be one of the greatest leaders who demonstrates going from egoity into humbleness, into profound, deep service for the all.
Okay, I want to really go to fantasy land. Let's say you spend that 2 hours with him and it's incredible. And then he says, Satyen, what's next? And you say, ayahuasca. What's that day look like? And then how does the world change as a result of that day?
Ayahuasca, the sacred medicine, brings us deep into looking at our shadows, our egos, the places we've been tortured since we grew up as a child, the unhealed aspects of our family dynamics with our father, our mother, our relationships, our exes. Ayahuasca would be a hammer to his spiritual life. It would be a hammer to his ego, but in the same tone, it would also be a resurrection of his spirit into a multi-dimensional leader that is trusted and more trusted. Because what he wants now is not just more megalomaniacal conquest. He wants to be trusted. And the more he's trustable and trusted by all parties, the more he'll be able to do good on the planet.
You know, Trump's been married 3 times. What would you say is the connection between successful marriages and leadership skills?
Well, if you have relationships that you failed in horrible ways, and he's got a record of being horrible with women, if you don't know how to be with your woman, and you don't know how to bring happiness, joy, and solidity to her, you're going to probably do the same in your leadership, whatever that realm is. And so it's imperative as us leaders, we learn how to be in better, stronger, loving, passionate, evolutionary relationships with our partners. And as a leader, my goodness, if we're not in love and passionate and connected and have deep trust with our wives, then we're bound to self-corruption. Our wives can see aspects of our shadows, our weaknesses that we can't even see. Even those leaders around us can't see or won't even tell us. Having that relationship with his wife is going to be one of the most healing, powerful things for his own relationship with her, with his family, but also women will trust him more because he's more trustable with women. He's got an atrocious record with women going back decades, But when he starts to heal and say, I want to bring my wife first, I want to do the inner work so that I can heal whatever is there behind the scenes that makes her seem so cold. When she can trust him in his leadership overtly, deeply, at a soul body level that's felt by other women, all the women in the country will start to trust him more because they can see her relaxed, joyful around him. For him to come into deep relationship, you can see there's very little polarity between them. It looks more like a staged relationship from my experience. I can't tell you what's going on behind the scenes, but overtly it looks like that. You don't see that passion between them. Now, if he started putting his wife first and saying, love, I need to rekindle our love. You know, what really drew me to you, and wherever we've been, whatever asshole I've been in relationship, I want to start being a better man now. When he starts doing that and is willing to do that, he'll grow as a leader. Women will trust him more. He will feel more whole in himself because he's more whole in his relationship, which will then make him more whole as a father. And his leadership will be more evolved, more enlightened, more whole, because we need to embrace the wisdom of our feminine partners. We need to listen to their words and what they're not saying through their body language to help hone our integrity, hone our humility, hone our power as strong male leaders.
In part of my early mentoring with you, you gave me a rating of how I was doing with leading feminine. You said it was a 4 out of 10. And you said, don't worry, we're gonna improve that quickly. What would you rate Trump, and what would he need to do to get that to a 10?
I'd rate him probably around 2 out of 10. Why I give him a 2 is at least he's bringing in other strong female leaders around him right now. Military leaders, people who have been strong in their positions, open in their heart, 2 out of 10. Why I give him 2 out of 10 also, willingness now to start bringing his wife forward, to bring his children forward. But he's got a long way to get to a 10. To get to a 10, what he would need to do is totally buckle down and say, although I'm going to be leading a country, I also want to lead my wife. I also want to get healed in my relationship with her. I also want to realize that by taking the time and loving my lady, letting her feel like a goddess, not just buying her things, not just sending her on trips, not just giving her the goods of material life, but I want to give her my heart. I want to bond in a way like I've never bonded before. And I'm willing to do the work inside myself to heal that relationship and win her heart, soul, and trust back. When he's willing to do that, even the attempt to do that, the numbers will go up. To get to a 10, he would need to reestablish his relationship with her first and to demonstrate to the world, to show I'm taking her on dates. Just as he's flamboyant with sharing his personal life or other aspects of his life, he needs to show the love between his family and to show the love that he has with his wife. And his wife needs to reciprocate if it's true. And if not, she needs to do the work as well of why is she with a guy like this? For what reason? Because he's a trophy husband? Because he's got money? He's got security? No. She needs to do the inner work as well to wonder, why do I need to be with him now? Why should I be with him now? And to do that healing work, to do that relationship work, I believe will be one of the greatest things he can do for the state of the nation and the state of his family.
Satyen, what's your message to men or women leaders like him who want to grow their influence just as grand as possible?
The first step is to have a real, honest inventory of your personal relationship with sexuality, your personal relationship with power, your personal relationship with money. In the yogic system, these are the 3 lower energies, the 3 lower chakras. Sex, power, and money are controlled by those energy centers. And unillumined and captured by the ego and the lower forces within us, they eventually end up corrupting us, no matter what external levels of success we have. Humbly doing the inner work to say, I want to enlighten my sexuality. I want to allow it to connect to my heart. I want to heal any wounds in those realms, in relationship, in passion. I'm willing to do that. I want to look at my inventory of how I've used power. What have I done that I think I shouldn't have done with my power? What have I failed to do with my power that I should have done or should be doing? When we're willing to look at that with a true, honest integrity and humility and humbleness, it starts to open and heal. It's the same with money. How have I used money or have against what my deepest ethic is? Or how have I failed to use my money for positive ventures and positive intents? How have I just flamboyantly wasted it without clarity and consciousness? When we start looking at those 3 primordial energies of sex, power, and money first, then we start to grow, we wisen, we deepen, we become more embodied as a whole-bodied, human, heart-centric, strong leader that is able to do so much more with so much less power and so much less ego.